Hello, Dr. Rosie Kuhn. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Don't want to do that. I'll do that. And let's just turn that down a little bit. Hello, I'm Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and I always start out feeling a little nervous because I have so much to say, and I don't know what is going to come out. I have notes over here, and that helps me keep on track with what I'm really wanting to say today. And then I pretty well riff and just listen to what's coming through intuitively that might be or will be supportive for you. Hi, Margie. Thanks for being here. So this month I'm talking about what I call deep recovery. We know what substance abuse is about. We know that when you're getting sober, you're basically not using the substance that you've been using. But what most of us don't realize is all the underlying elements of what has us use a substance. Now, I used last week, in the first week, I talked about that we're all recovering. Hang on a second. We are that we're all recovering something or someone. And what that means is that there's somebody inside here, the essential us, the one that's free of our addictions, free of our habits, free of fear. There's someone in here that we want to know. We want to reclaim that person. We want to realize that intense, realize in a sense like, oh yeah, that's who I am. But one thing is to know that, in a sense, say it, but the other thing is to actually be the expression of that for yourself. And so substance abuse, workaholism, lots of behaviors, pornography, sex, love addictions, food, biting your nails, masturbating, buying, shopping, debting, gaming, social media-ism. Those are all practices and habits that we get so addicted to. In a sense, it's our go-to when we feel levels of discomfort or levels of anxiety. And that could be like this much. We're not, it doesn't have to be a lot. I'll talk about that in a second. But we're constantly managing ourselves in terms of what we think we should be, what we're afraid we're not, what we've been told that we aren't or what we are. We're managing all of that stuff. And in all that management, we don't get to be ourselves because we're always like, oh, what are they going to think about me? What are they going to think about me? Is he going to leave me? Is he going to want me? Or is she going to, yell at me, or whatever those things are that we're constantly doing. So we're managing ourselves. And in that management process, we don't get to be who we really are. And my work as a transformational life coach is really about making the paradigm shift so that we actually realize that if we're not that, then we are our essential nature. We are our essential self. We are something other than all of this managing that's going on. And so my intention for this month of calling it deep recovery is that we start looking at all the ways that we're managing to stay safe, to stay secure, to stay stable, or to stay, sane. All the ways that we manage, we're addicted to those. We're habitually in that so that we don't get to know ourselves outside that. And so my practice as a transformational coach is to support and empower people to start to look at these different patterns of beings, these patterns that can be so entrenched that it is a habit or an addiction. And for me, personality disorders is a form of addiction in that we get hooked into a certain pattern of operating our thinking, and then we keep doing that, and it just keeps entrenching it until it's the only pattern we know how to operate from. And so as a transformational coach, I empower people to start to recognize those patterns and go, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing that," or "I did that," or "I wanna do that." So we can look at and notice our patterns and begin to make choices potentially that are different than the patterns that we make, so that we can actually be our essential nature, and that means having more fun, being more joyful, being more in a state of, in some cases, generosity or playfulness, but more well-being and more balance and more health and more most likely more delight in the life in your life. So that's what I'm here to talk about. Hi, David. I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad you're here. I missed you truly. So I'm glad you're here. So so in the first week we talked about all of those things that you are recovering yourself from and what you're recovering in the sense of that essential self. And this week, I want to uh, talk more about what we are recovering ourselves from. And again, there's that place of the thinking is I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm a recovering addict. I'm a drug addict. I'm a recovering sex addict. I'm a recovering gamer. I'm recovering, so I'm not doing those behaviors anymore. I'm a recovering food addict. So, or debtor, or so we think that we're just letting go of those behaviors of the substances, our attachment to that. But underlying that is a whole world of other stuff that comes up, the patterns that or the beliefs or the feelings that we're having, body sensations, the uncomfortableness that we're attempting to mask, attempting to avoid and ignore and distract ourselves from. And the more that we're in that distracting, avoiding, ignoring place, we're not able to be ourselves. And my whole reality, I've been doing this work on myself and with people for, gosh, 40 years, 20 of those years as a transformational coach. Um, and so it's my bailiwick, if you will. I worked in recovery in Nova Scotia for 8 years, working with, people that were primarily drug addicts and alcoholics and their families and codependents, people who were part of and engaged in that relationship. And that taught me so much about how we are immersed in these patterns and how they're so difficult to get out of unless we have some sort of witness or thinking partner or fellowship or something that can help us go, yeah, those are patterns. And how can you choose to do something different? But until we're aware of those patterns, we can't do anything because we can't change something that we don't see. And this is where the whole denial element comes in. Is when we're in denial of something, we can't change it because we're not we're in denial that that's an issue. And this is happens a lot for people with substance abuse issues, is that they're in denial that it's a problem. And when one of the things that we would say is that if it's a problem for the family, or if this is a problem for your wife, it's a problem. Where it's like, oh, she just wants me to quit drinking because and it's like, yeah, well, if it's a problem for her, it's a problem. And it's like, yeah, no, not really. And that's where that denial element comes in. So we're all recovering from something. And the more that we can be aware of, and I know that we all know this, that there is this part of us that is the truest nature of our essential selves, where we know that place of being aligned with our highest knowing, our highest truth, our highest good. We know when we're in that place of delight and joy, and sometimes people feel it only rarely in their life. And my job is to support and empower everyone and you into growing this capacity so that you can be more joyful, more of your life. One of the things that I created this past year was what I call the Inward Bound Boot Camp for Self Transformation, and it's a 20 video boot camp. 10 minutes. I think each video is about 10 minutes, and it's really to support and empower you to take yourself through this boot camp so that you begin to cultivate the skills and the tools to work yourself towards self-transformation uh, at whatever degree and whatever pace it works for you. So down below, you'll find the link to, or links, actually, there's two, because you can get a download if you'd like. So those are available to you to help you and support you through this process of deep recovery. We can call it transformation, we can call it deep recovery, we can call it whatever we want, but what it is reclaiming who you are in your essential nature, in that heart's desire, the fullest happy place that you can. Hello, Aisha. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Um, so I don't necessarily want to make a distinction between habits, patterns, addictions. Whatever we're doing, and that includes doing in terms of emotional or mental doings or physical doings, biting our nails or tapping or wiggling or masturbating. Those are all patterns that we use to minimize anxiety, to minimize stressful we might be feeling, minimize emotions that might be coming up. And these are all ways that if I bite my nails and I get that feels good, I'm going to do more of that. Or eating a cookie, it's like, oh, that feels really good. I think I'll have another one. Those are things that we use to help calm ourselves down. Oh, thank you, Aisha. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad to hear from you. Um, so the patterns that we take on so many levels are to help us calm ourselves. And here's what's been really important to me. Before I worked in recovery, I did a master's degree in marriage and family and child therapy. And one of the really important things that I learned there was within the family construct, within the family reality, there is a certain dynamic and a certain energy or vibration or frequency that is there. In dysfunctional families, there's a lot of anxiety because there's an inconsistency with the patterns in the family. There's a level of lack of safety, insecurity. What's true? What's not true? Who can you depend on? Who's there for you? It's like what's right? What's wrong? There's all of these unsureness and confusions and frustrations and disappointments in a dysfunctional family. Now, I think we're all on the spectrum of dysfunctional families because there's no perfect family that sets you up for success for the rest of your life. We are all here, excuse me. We're all here to learn and grow. We're all here as spiritual beings having this human experience so that we can grow and learn and cultivate and expand our capacities to be. And that's being with any of it and all of it. So we start out in these families and it's like, here's the the environment and here's what it's like to be in this environment. And for like I was saying, there's this whole spectrum of dysfunction from highly dysfunctional to more less and less dysfunction. But in a dysfunctional family, we're not allowed to think for ourselves, to know what we think, know what we feel, know what we need, or know what we want. So in a sense, the degree to which you are allowed to know what you want, know what you think, know what you feel, what you need, that gives you a greater degree, a greater capacity to feel and think and know and want what's your heart's desire versus someone who said, I only let myself want what I know I can have. There's no expanded sense of what I can have, like, oh, the world's my oyster. I can have whatever I want. It's like, no, I can only have this. Or in the family I grew up in, I had four older brothers and sisters, and I know five older brothers and sisters and three younger ones. And it was always like, well, they need something more than I do. Everybody else's stuff was more important than mine. That was how I made sense of that reality. So it wasn't until I was in my 30s and I heard this, that in dysfunctional families, you're not allowed to think, feel, or need or want. It's like I didn't even have a clue of the degree to which I had those didn't even know that I was doing whatever I was doing in order to oppress my thinking, oppress my feelings, oppress my needs and wants, like to not so I didn't even know what they were. I was in so much of what is called, in the domestication of me that was like I just wanted what I was supposed to want. Grow up, get married, have children. Basically, that was it. So I didn't have I had sort of a sense of self, but not enough that I really followed my own heart. So I think this is true for all of us to whatever degree that is. And we cultivate patterns so that we don't know, so that we stay in denial or we avoid or ignore my truth. Because my truth is going to create my experiences. If I have a truth, it's going to create conflict in the family, and that was unsafe. When I was 17 years old and I decided not to go to Catholic church, and everybody else didn't go to Catholic church, but I was the one. My mother said, "Are you going to church?" And I said, "No, and I'm not going to go." And because I was honest and truthful about this was true for me, that this I wasn't feeling nourished in my soul, going to Catholic church, she got really angry and didn't talk to me for a long time. And so that kind of confrontation wasn't allowed. And so that was a very scary thing to talk about what was true for me. And if we're not allowed to talk about things and we're not allowed to know what's true because that creates more challenge and anxiety. And So we all do something to mitigate the anxiety and the frustration and the disappointment, the degree to which we're not seen or heard or gotten. Those are the three things that each and every single one of us wants. We want to be seen, heard, and gotten. uh, Marge, yours says something like Li zone out. Oh, I think it's like I zone out in front of the TV. Yes. A lot of people zone out in front of the TV. Um, and it's good to know because in what we can begin to do, and this is part of what I'm wanting is for you to go, you as in anybody and everyone who's watching this is you get to start to go, oh, there's that pattern. And am I doing that because I really just want to zone out? Am I doing this to avoid or ignore or distract myself from what I'm really feeling? And what I'm really being with, what's really true for me. And this is that challenge for us to grow ourselves to be true to what is in the moment, to let ourselves know what is in the moment, as opposed to zoning out, distracting, avoiding, ignoring, or denying. Call that the dyad: distract, ignore, avoid, or deny. Dyad. And we're doing one of those if we're not unable, as in allowed, we're not allowed to be with ourselves in that authentic truth of, if I'm not zoning out, then I have to be with my sad, bad, mad person inside. And I don't want to do that. Or if I'm not zoning out, then I'm going to go eat. If I'm not eating, I'm going to go masturbate. If I'm not masturbating, I'll go get a drink. All of these things that are go-tos that are part of the patterning so that we don't have to be with the discomfort of being human. Um, when I was growing up, like I mentioned, there was this air or energy or this sense of like anxiety. It's like you didn't know really, coming home, and maybe my mom was visiting a friend, but it was like, we don't know where she's at, or things like that. You just don't know. So there was a lot of that kind of thing. And my parents were alcoholics. So my dad would yell and just, it's a lot of craziness. Um, and not a lot of kindness and not a lot of sense of, like I said, being seen, heard, or gotten. There wasn't a lot of that. But I'd go over and visit my friends who had, like, they were just down the street. They had 2 children. There were 2 children, one was my best friend, and I'd go there, and there's this calm serenity, this peacefulness. There was this lovely music playing. There was just there was a flow that just felt gentle and appreciated. I felt appreciated, and I felt seen. It was like, "Wow, I want more of that." But I had to go home. So when we are in places where we know that feeling, we want to then nourish more of that. And it's hard. Those are hard patterns to acknowledge and see and appreciate for ourselves, because that's what this is all about, is how we can see, feel, and get ourselves. That's the most important thing here. Is we always have been taught to externalize. Am I seen as worthy, valuable, loved, appreciated by the external world? And at some point we have to go, it doesn't matter. What matters is, do I see myself? Do I get myself? Do I hear myself when I am in this place of discomfort or sadness or feeling angry or whatever that is inside? And can I be here with myself versus distracting and avoiding and ignoring and denying? It's like, can I be here with me? And that to me is the whole practice. Um, so, um, some of the patterns that were, and if you have any questions, please ask them. And if there is, if you're listening to this after the recording and you have questions, please ask them, because I would be happy to answer them. Just leave comments, leave your questions in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Um, I also really encourage people to, if they hear what I'm saying and it's like, yeah, this is what I'm in, really encourage you to get some support from a coach, a therapist, your spiritual director, a guide, a health practitioner, AA programs or 12-step programs. Um, a lot of people say they don't want to be in a 12-step program because it's spiritual or religious. There's so many programs out there that you can find one that is gonna fit you. Even if it's an online, fellowship program, you can find one out there that will support you and empower you. For me, the 12-step programs are, I think, essential. They have been, just critical in my evolution of self, because I've had to look at what they're actually saying, especially the first 3. Um, and, uh, and in that I've been able to really shift a lot of my orientation, and it becomes spiritual, in a sense that at some point where I feel powerless, what am I gonna do? Where am I gonna go? What am I gonna And so to reach to a higher power, whether that's a sponsor or a physician or a therapist or a spot, whoever that is, I have an opportunity to share and get support from somebody else. And that's so critical, so critical. So some of the patterns that I think are with us, and part of this challenge is the patterns, and I'm saying patterns as in where we begin to cultivate ways of letting go or getting rid of the anxiety or anxiousness or angst. Angst to me is a really good word. The feelings of sad, mad, bad, basically, and the bad feeling bad. We don't. There's a lot of things that we don't have a word for, but we know we feel bad. Um, so when we defer to others, when we don't allow ourselves to have our own thoughts, feelings, needs, and wants, and it's like, well, what do you want? Somebody says, you want to go to a movie? It's like, yeah. It's like, well, where do you want to go? It's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? So it's always that deferring. Or my father wanted me to whatever go to this college, and so I did that. Or my mother wanted me to be a lawyer, so I went and was a lawyer. They wanted me to marry this kind of person, so I married this kind of person. But I was in love with that person. So we defer who we are, and we do this all the time. And one of the highest principles that we can have for ourselves in alignment to this thing called our essential nature is to know who we are and not defer, to own our power and not defer it to somebody else. David says, could it be the child who continues to suck his thumb or the security blanket? The safety and comfort for such a child is sourced from within, hence the beginning of self-medication. I think you're right. I think you're right. And it's a real balance between that sucking thumb and the blanket and getting the security from something, and really having growing that sense of I'm okay. Like I can medicate myself in a sense, in a good way. Like what's a good self-medication versus a not good self-medication? I think that's a bigger point because, I was going to bring in, or I'll bring in sometime. I have a teddy bear, William, that I have had since I was in 30. So William has been with me almost 40 years, and he's a big comfort for me. Now I don't carry him. I don't carry him around all day. He's in my bedroom, and I sleep with him, and I sleep with Gracie, my dog. But that having something that is of comfort, or a cup of tea is of comfort. That's a form of self-medication. Going for a walk is self-medication. Doing yoga practices or prayer or those kinds of things. There's a lot of self-medication that we do that is actually helpful and healing. And we know the difference. We know the difference. The self-medication from I'm afraid I'm not going, from a fear-based place or habitual place, that's that other thing. And if we, and I like what you're saying in a sense that sometimes we can say, okay, I'm not allowed to carry my blanket with me anymore, and I'm not allowed to suck my thumb, but it's okay to smoke a cigarette or vape or whatever it is, that sort of that oral thing. So we can transfer in our patterns or addictions or our needs for comforts or the ways that we self-medicate. I think that's a perfect word for all of this is we're always self-medicating with either emotional, mental, somatic, or physical or activity. We're always self-medicating, but are we doing it in a way that's actually nourishing and nurturing ourselves, or creating a barrier and an armoring and a withholding from the world because we're afraid, perhaps? So I love what you're saying, David. I think it's really excellent. How do we self-medicate? And when I drink a glass of water, we know water's medicinal. We know it's really important for us. Healthy water is really important for us. So I'm about to self-medicate here, which is a good thing. When I'm binging on some Netflix show, part of that is self-medicating. I just want to sort of stop doing all the busyness and just kind of chill out and enjoy, different stories or movies or whatever. So listening, we know the difference. Like Marge is talking about, she zones out in front of the TV. That zoning out is different, can be different. And when I'm working with clients, I basically say, okay, so is what you're wanting occurring while you're zoning out in front of the TV? And if I ask Marge that, I'm going to assume in this moment she would go, no, I don't like that feeling. Okay. People who smoke cigarettes and have that smoke stuff and yucky mouth, and I'd say, so do you like that? And they go, yeah, no, I don't like that. I want to quit. So we know the difference. We know the difference. And this is not about quit your habit. That's not what this is about. It's not about quit your patterns, quit, it's not about any of that. It's really about cultivating awareness so that you can go, wow, look at that. Look at how I do that all the time. Look at that pattern. Wow, I never noticed that before. And when we get sober, in a sense, when we stop using our drug of choice or our behavior of choice, things start to reveal themselves. I was basically a love addict. I was always into dating and men and falling in love. Falling in love thing I just loved. I had to go get sober. I had to stop dating. Stop. And then got married. I found a guy who I loved and wanted to be with, and we were together for 12 years. Same patterns showed up. And so I stopped and have been sober, clean and sober for about 10 years. 10 years. And until I look at some of these patterns, each relationship I'm in, I can see where I'm utilizing those old patterns that keep me from actually being my authentic self. And so every single relationship is the potential for revealing who I really am to myself and being comfortable with that. And if there's a point where I meet somebody that's special that I want to develop something even deeper with, then that will be a culmination of all the practices that I've been doing over these 10 years anyway. David says, then it's how you do it. Send a bunch of flowers to a friend. One also feels good before, therefore also a form of self-medication, a mutual feel good. Yes. Excellent. That brings me into codependency, where what we're addicted to is we're addicted to focusing on other people. And we do things for other people. Oh, let me do that for you. Let me take care of you. And that enabling is supposed to make other people feel good and feel good. But the truth is quite often that enabling keeps some people sick. It keeps some people in their patterns. I've been codependency is, I think, part of the love addict thing of being in relationships. I wanted to be in relationships because I like the yummy feeling of being, in love, but also that sense of being needed and being needed. That's pretty much it. So, if my partner needed money, I would come up with the money. If he needed something else, I would come up with it. If he needed to change, I would constantly be doing for him. And he'd say, "Oh, I really appreciate that," but there was no reciprocity. There was no. It wasn't a partnership. And I've had this this challenge or this pattern with all my significant relationships. They weren't partners because I was the one that needed to be the one that was needed. And so I needed somebody that was needy in a sense. And so I just kept creating that because that was what I did. And so the partnership is when there's a reciprocity, when that I'm being supported and my needs are being met and I am seen, heard, and gotten as much as I'm seeing, hearing, and getting them. That's healthy. That interdependence is healthy. And that's what we want to build. And quite often, people who are codependent in nature, it's like they feel less than. And so somebody would want to give me something. It's like, oh, no, 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 I don't deserve it. Just all that kind of stuff. And those are more patterns that we can look at. Those are more dynamics that we can look at and go, wow, I want to be appreciated. I want to be needed. I want to be loved. And I'm not letting myself. That's a pattern. And the more I could see that, then it's like, wow, maybe I can maybe I can stop it. And this is where people say, if somebody gives you a compliment, don't go, oh yeah, no, not really. I didn't really need, I don't deserve. Just say thank you as a practice instead of all that negativity and the self-deprecation. Self-deprecation is another one of these patterns. Like every time something good happens and you go, oh no, not me. Or no wonder the world is so bad and no wonder I feel this way because and just fill in the blank. All the times that you self-deprecate with comments about yourself to yourself. That self-deprecation is one of the major reasons people get depressed, is because of that negative pattern of thinking about oneself. Marge says, "You're right. I don't like zoning out. It deepens my boredom, so I pile on and play games on my iPad and end up not even engaging with the TV I wanted to see." Yeah. It's like, this is boring. Okay, well, let's do something else. Let's do something else. Let's do something else. And hey, let's have some snacks while we're playing our games and not watching TV. And yeah, and all of these things that we're doing all at the same time to, in essence, distract ourselves from being with what is in this moment. We do not like to be uncomfortable. We're told it's bad or wrong, or there's something wrong with you if you feel uncomfortable. If you feel discomfort of any sort, there's something wrong with you. And this is one of the patterns is the way that we pathologize ourselves, and we're taught this by psychology. This is I have a problem with I have a PhD in transpersonal psychology, um, but psychology quite often pathologizes people, as does most of medicine. We're not in a health and well-being reality. We're in a you're sick and you're crazy, and you should be afraid. And we those kinds of if you I think therapists are really, really, really important, and I think they have an offering, and I know I have a blind spot for some of that. However, I am aware of that if you're pathologized, then you are not listened to, you're not being seen, heard, or gotten. And if people want to put a label on you, you're not being seen, heard, or gotten for who you are. Here's the symptoms that show up. And all of the symptoms are saying is, hey, I've got some issues. I'm afraid, and this is how I'm dealing with my fear. And that's anxiety is just a fear-based sensation in our bodies we don't know what to do with. So let's do something. You know, here's my blankie and my this. That's what we're all doing to some effect all day long. And the more that we can be aware of that, then the more we can shift those patterns. So how you pathologize yourself, how you pathologize everybody else too, that pathologizing, where you make yourself right and you make other people wrong, you get to be right about other people being wrong. That's a really big pattern that we do. There's no place for relationship in there. Me being right about somebody being needy, there's no room for relationship and authenticity, intimacy. None, because I'm in a pattern of a role, and that I put somebody else over there in their pattern and role, and we don't have a relationship. We just have you say your lines, I'll say my lines. And that's what happens. There's no spontaneity, there's no authenticity in that. And that's how most of us are. And that includes me. I'm not anywhere higher above. I just have this awareness that I've cultivated and continue to cultivate so that I can be aware of what are those patterns that get in my way of being my authentic self. How do I know when I'm being my authentic self? Some of that is I'm feeling bad or sad or glad, and I'm allowing myself to feel bad, sad, or glad rather than going for my drug of choice, going for something that's going to calm me or give me security. So each one of us is doing that. And that's what we do until we get clear enough to go, I got to stop doing that because it's not working. Not because somebody else tells you. I mean, how many times has somebody told you you should do it differently? And even if it's something you should do differently, you don't because really you don't care. I wrote a blog a number of years ago called 5 Reasons Why I Don't Tell People What to Do. And that's partly number 1 is because people don't do what I tell them to do. They're going to do what they do. So that's why I'm in the work that I am in and the way that I do it is because I know people don't want to hear any advice. They want advice, but then they don't take it. So I don't give advice. And even you've probably noticed if you've listened to any of my podcasts or these YouTube lives, is I'm never going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to say, hey, you get to be grow this ability to be more aware of your patterns and your habits and perhaps your addictions, and you get to be a choice about what you want to do about that or not. Marge could sit in front of the TV and play her games and have her snacks and whatever else she wants to do until the day she dies. It's her choice, and my job is not to judge or say assess or pathologize, but to say, "Hey, if this is the quality of life that you're wanting, keep doing it. But if you want something different, you might wanna do something different." If you want something different, you might wanna do something different. I was listening to a woman last night. There's this process called, neurographic art, and it looks really interesting. Just Google it, it's pretty interesting. But one of the things the woman was saying is our brains are one of the laziest organs in our bodies, and it's because it doesn't wanna change. It doesn't want you to change. It doesn't want you to tell it what to do. It doesn't want you to train yourself to do it different. It doesn't want you to make different choices. Your brain, call it your ego, whatever that is, it doesn't wanna do it different. So that's why, change is so difficult, and transformation is like, holy crap, it's a rare person that will really, take themselves through the process of transformation, because it's a revealing that's, for me, is very fascinating, but it's very uncomfortable because there's discomfort in our physical being and our emotional being and our mental being. But it's necessary to grow ourselves and grow our capacities to be our fullest essential nature, be the fullest expression of ourselves that we came here to learn how to be. And, if you want to learn to play the piano, it's not like you go and sit down and all of a sudden all of it comes to you and you play these amazing, magnificent pieces of music. You have to take yourself and train your hands to do a certain thing. You have to train your eyes to see music. You have to train your ears to hear. You have to do this training process. If you want to play the guitar, if you want to become a writer, anything that you want to become, you have to do this training process. If you want to become a whole person, an authentic expression of your essential nature, you got to train or not. And, I used to be really attached to helping people do that, and I'm still very attached to you having just the best life ever, but I'm not so attached to being the codependent enabler that I should, do whatever I need to do to make you change. It's like, it's really your choice, because I realize more and more, you're here to have the human experience you're here to have. You're here to learn and grow yourself, and I'm here as a support. I'm not here to grow you or tell you how to do it. I'm just gonna say, "Hey, if you notice these things and it's not what you want, you might wanna do something different." "Okay. And who do you listen to?" And more, the spiritual philosophies say, "Your inner truth is right here." And I'm just pointing to your inner truth. I'm not pointing to my inner truth and saying, "This is the way." I'm saying, "You know the way. Marge, you know the difference." You know the difference. And I'm laughing because I know the difference. I know when I'm enmeshed in my stuff, and when I'm avoiding and ignoring. I know it. And I want a life. I really want to know who I am in my fullest potential. And so I keep doing the work that I do. And I want you guys to do the work that you do. So the patterns that we're looking at are, again, deferring to others, the pathologizing, the what I've heard called the wash, rinse, and repeat, where you are doing the same patterns over and over again with people, and it just is the same pattern over and over. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with a person. I'll just talk about myself in terms of, my partner who would do something and I would get upset and he'd say, "I'm sorry, I'll never do that again." And then a couple of days later, he does it again and I get upset and he says, "I'm sorry," and says, "I'll never do it again." And I go, "Okay." And this constant forgiving, that wash, rinse, and repeat that we do, especially in codependent or enabling relationships. He's like, oh yeah, well he had a bad day, or oh yeah, he had a. We make excuses for other people. We justify, rationalizing. Those are other patterns. Rationalizing, justifying your behavior, other people's behaviors, making excuses. That's another. Those are patterns of behaving. It's like what lying, and this is something I started with about a year ago. Is this? I did a live called "Live, Cheat, and Steal." Lie, cheat, and steal. Because when are we lying? All the time, and we're cheating ourselves or stealing some essence of ourselves. We're not able to be this fullest expression of ourselves. We lie to ourselves so much, and so we get to see that. And so that's that lie, cheat, and and sorry, I meant to say the wash, rinse, and repeat, repeat, repeat. And when we see that, we go, stop. It's not working. It's not working. And it's really important to get help. It's really important to get support so that you can see these patterns. And if it's a therapist, great. If it's a life coach, great. If you want to work with me, I've got some room in my right now in my week. So if you'd like some support from me, I'm available. But get some help to change these patterns. And or again, there's all these support groups and fellowships and AA 12-step programs that I think are fundamental and foundational to real differences that you can make. Quite often we choose, the pattern is to choose based on, again, what do my children need me to be? What do my parents need me to be? What does my partner need me to be? What does my work need me to be? And all of these just deferring to other people doesn't allow us to be our own authentic self, to even know what that is. And this is huge work when I'm working with clients, is because they're so used to this deferring process, they don't have a sense of who is really inside. And that's what this is all about. And I really believe that we're here on this planet to get that. Noticing our impulses. We all have, or you have impulses all the time. And that impulse is either fear-based or an extension or expansion. And so which impulse do you follow? And this is very this is one of those practices that staying in the now, if you will, is where you get to watch yourself. This is the only place learning happens. You can't, you could possibly be working, Marge, you could be doing some solitaire things or cooking or whatever, but the level of attention that you bring to what I'm saying or what I'm experiencing is probably half or whatever when we're distracted by, oh, here's an impulse. Oh, here's an impulse. But if you're saying, I'm training myself to stay focused in this moment and to listen, this is what meditation's all about. It's just training yourself to not follow all of those impulses, because those impulses are going constantly. The more that we can train ourselves to follow one impulse, to watch a candle or an om or whatever that is, it's just a form of training our mind to not, to be more clear about which impulse we're following, basically. How's it going over there? There's a lot of stuff. I keep wanting to make these shorter, but they just keep being an hour long, so that's what they're at. So one of the things I want to talk about is what's challenging for people in the recovery process when they're recovering themselves, reclaiming themselves, is that sometimes there's some elements that are challenging to be with. One of them is what I'm saying is the both and. Um, and I'll have to read this because then I'll remember. So we're realizing we made a choice. Let me just read this to myself. So, quite often in our life, it's like a good thing and a bad thing, or it's sad and it's happy. So there's the both and in our lives. Marge, you're happy sitting there zoning out with your iPad. There's a happiness about that, and there's also the boredom and the frustration, and there's got to be more. There's the both going on at the same time, And quite often, we're in these states of both and we don't know what to do about that. And it's what I call a big fat be with. I'm not the only one that calls it that, but it's called a big fat be with. It's like, I'm happy here and I don't want to do anything else, but I should do something else. It's a both and. It's like, okay, so what do you want? What do you want to do? The both and of I love chocolate, but I get a reaction that isn't working for me. I love sugar and wheat, but I get a reaction. So do I eat the sugar and have the reaction, or do I say and stay healthy, live, do more healthier things? Um, I love my dog Gracie. I love taking her outside, and at the same time, I want to be doing something else. I want to be inside talking to you or whatever that is. And so there's always these both ands that are challenging for us to be with. And so rather than being present to the both and, we just avoid, ignore, distract, and deny. So that's one of those places that it's uncomfortable to begin to create awareness, cultivate awareness, because it's like, well, I don't know what to do with that. I might as well go back to watching TV. Or I don't know what to do with that. I might as well go back to work. Workaholics, they have every reason. I could I think um, I have the tendency to want to be productive, but that comes from fear. Every morning when I wake up, there's this angst, like, "What are you gonna do today?" That angst is a pattern that I used to be with a lot, and now I go with that angst that shows up, I go, "Yeah, don't know yet. Don't know what's gonna show up. I got a couple of clients, but other than that, I don't know." Well, you should be more effective. You should be and all those things that are fear-based is is a be with for me that I become more conscious about. And then I can say, yeah, no, I'm not going to follow that fear today. I'm going to listen really truly to what's my essential nature. Maybe go for a walk earlier in the morning, or maybe do something else that's different than how I usually do things because, because, um, what we don't want to be with too, this is another thing, is we don't wanna be with the sadness. We don't wanna be with the anger. We don't wanna be with the disappointments. We don't want to be with the the stuff that's in us that we've been carrying for a very long time. Anybody who has been in recovery knows that, in a sense, the moment that they start with their true addictions, they've oppressed all of the emotions from there down. And so when they start to get sober, 3 years, 20 years, doesn't matter. Even this is true for smokers or drug addicts, is that emotion is going to come up because it's just been oppressed. So when you stop doing the patternings that have had you avoid, ignore, distract, and deny, you're going to start feeling discomfort. And you go, yuck. And then you start going back to TV binging or whatever that is. And you go, yeah, that's why people, there's so much recidivism. I'm saying it that way. So many people fall off the wagon over and over again because it gets too uncomfortable. And what we're growing is our capacity for sustainability. No, very few people, there are people who say, I'm going to stop drinking, and they stop drinking. There's just no relapse. But for most of us, we relapse over and over and over again. And there's no judgment in that. It's just a big fat be with. It's like, yeah, I just did it again. I fall off the sugar wheat wagon regularly, and I'm working at doing that less. But I do. And I'm learning and growing through every experience. So um, we get uncomfortable with that sadness, the feeling bad, feeling uncomfortable, feeling like you're sick. A lot of times the symptoms of health are actually symptoms of what we think of as disease. Like, I have these aches, or I have these pains, or my stomach is bothering me, those kinds of things. And what it is the energy is finally coming out or detoxing. But again, we don't see it that way. We think there's something wrong. So we go to the doctors. And that's important. If you think there's something wrong, go check it out. And if there's nothing wrong, go, great. I'm on my way to recovery here. I'm recovering my health and well-being. That's what I'm doing. So we feel the discomfort and we go, there must be something wrong. But when I'm drinking, I don't feel that pain. Or when I'm eating, I don't that thing doesn't hurt me as much. And so I'm going to keep eating. It's like, okay, it doesn't matter. I mean, what matters is, in a sense, it's you're here to grow yourself, but you can choose not to grow yourself this lifetime. It's up to you. It's your choice. You're at choice about all of it. And you wouldn't be listening to me if you didn't have a sense of something that was wanting to change for you. But or not, you're just entertained. I don't know. Um, so that and I'll share with you too that um, over the last couple of weeks, I watch different shows on Netflix, and the- what was happening in there was a lot of kindness. People were getting each other, seeing each other, seeing, hearing, and getting. And people were being seen, and the level of kindness and compassion that was being shown, I just cried. And I cried and cried like every night. I was crying and crying and crying. That's in a sense a form of therapy, like watching certain Netflix shows. The Queer Eye for me is really very healing because of the level to which these individuals are seeing, hearing, and getting the people they're working with. And so I was going like, "Why am I crying so much?" And it was in a sense, David, a form of self-medication, in a sense that it in that process, I was releasing, um, and the only thing I can think of is I was releasing, um, the sadness of what I didn't experience much in my family. That level of kindness, that level of being seen, heard, and gotten, didn't experience that in my life much. And so watching this, I am, it's a way of allowing myself to experience vicariously kindness to other people. And, and so that for me is one of the benefits I get out of watching Netflix shows and things like that, and even binging, because it keeps me in the process of that. I rarely watch things that I'm not keenly affected by in a positive way. That's really an important piece for me. So, David, I'm so glad you brought up the self-medication thing, because I think it's brilliant to think of it that way. It's like it's either medicating yourself in the sense of you're staying in that fear-based security, I'm alone and unsafe, or nourishing our souls and nourishing our fullest nature. And that's what I want. There's some therapies out there, and I don't know what they're called, but I know there's a book out there used to be, of movies, and here's the emotion that will be you'll deal with, in a sense, or be with. This will make you angry. This will make you scared. This will make you sad. Those kinds of things. Hi, Fred. Thanks for being here. Um, and so we can use movies to help us move through certain emotions that are difficult to be with. That's a really good thing to do. I love romantic comedies. I watch them all the time because they delight me. And so that's a good thing, is to be delighted and to be given myself that opportunity. Living alone on the side of a mountain, which is my choice. Um, I don't have that kind of quality of romance in my life. And so I love living vicariously that way right now. And I'm okay with that. And, it's a form of self-medication, and I'm okay with that. And that's the point too, isn't it? Is that we're empowered to make those choices, as opposed to saying, for instance, uh, soap operas, ongoing every day. I used to be hooked into those and couldn't not watch them. So that was a different form of, in a sense, self-medication versus where I'm at now. That's my perspective. Don't know that's just mine, and that's all I know, and that's all that's important to me. If somebody said, that's really not good for you, I'd go, hey, it's good for me. It's working for me. So um, that's what I'm going to do. So that's what we do. It's like people can tell us whatever they want, but we check in and go, yeah, no, I'm sticking with the binging right now. Um, Neil Donald Walsh said in Conversations with God, said, when you are in alignment with your highest truth and your highest good, you are aligned with everyone's highest good and highest truth. And that was a really hard thing as a codependent enabler to hear, because but it was one of the most important things for me to hear, is that if I listen to myself and honor myself and not try to take care of anybody else, not try to fix them, heal them, convert them, make them wrong, make them right, whatever that is, if I just listen to myself, they then will have to listen to themselves. Then will have to become accountable and responsible for their choices, as opposed to me constantly being responsible for other people's choices. That allowed me, and that was, gosh, I don't know how long ago that those books came out, 20 some years ago or more, the Conversations with God. But it allowed me to start to hone in to what's in my highest truth. What's my highest truth? What's my highest good? And then there was the part that went, yeah, but the both and thing. Yeah, but then that means that they might leave me. That means they might do something else. And it's like, yeah, they're going to have to do whatever they need to do to take care of themselves. I need to take care of myself. I have to focus here. And that helped me begin to break a lot of different patterns when it came to that enabling, forgiving, helping stuff that wasn't healthy, and it didn't allow for a true partnership to occur. So that's really, really important in terms of when we're in this process of recovering and reclaiming ourselves, being honoring of ourselves. It's listening to what is really true for me. I'm uncomfortable right now. And a lot of recovery time is spent in levels of discomfort, physical, emotional, spiritual, this place of I don't know what to do, I don't know how to be me, I don't even like being me right now. If I was somebody else, I wouldn't have these problems. It's like, that's true, you'd have they'd have those problems. But all of those places that are uncomfortable, and that we get to develop a sense of relationship with ourselves, where we're going to listen to ourselves, we're going to begin to see, hear, and get what's true for ourselves, as opposed to blaming ourselves or blaming our family or blaming our mothers and fathers or blaming our husbands or blaming the banks or blaming whoever we're going to blame. It's like, okay, stop. That's not working. It's not bringing me serenity. It's not bringing me contentment. It's not bringing me a sense of connection. And it's really a matter of what it is you want, enough that you're willing to be with that level of discomfort. A friend of mine had, this was a number of years ago, he had thyroid cancer, and he was about to go into surgery when he met a guy who was into holistic medicines. And he said, I want you to talk to this guy. So he went and talked to this dietitian, in essence, who said, I want you to postpone the surgery, and I want you to go on a raw diet. And there was more talk about that. And in 3 months, if you aren't better, then go have the surgery. So my friend went on a strict raw diet, and within 3 months, that tumor had shrunk, and then within 6 months, that tumor was gone. Now, I don't know if you've ever wanted to go on a raw diet, but to just go cold turkey, no pun intended there, but go cold turkey and no meat or dairy, any of that stuff, just go raw. He was so committed that that's what he did. And his tumor, like I said, shrunk, and then it disappeared, and he never had surgery. Uh, and that level of commitment and dedication brought him about the effects that he wanted, the desired outcome. and each one of us is able to make the choices that we make to the degree that we can. I went raw for about 2 weeks, I think, before I started putting stuff in, because I didn't wanna go through the what felt like a self-deprecation. I felt like I was denying myself stuff, and that whole attitude that comes into and part of the rationalizations and justifications for doing what we do and not doing what we said we would do, those justifications. So that's kind of what it's all about. Oh my God, I'm over. I can't believe it. I've never gone over. This deep recovery process to me is just one of my passions, and so thanks for staying around this long. Again, down below you find a link to the boot camp for self transformation, which would be another word for boot camp for deep recovery, if that's of something of interest to you. Um, Truly want you just to be aware, grow that capacity to know yourself better and to appreciate everything you've come through to be here now, because it's extraordinary what every individual, every human being goes through to be here now. It's extraordinary. And the more that you realize that and recognize that, the more you will honor yourself rather than beat yourself up. And that's what I want. All right. I love you guys. Thanks for being here again. Bye for now.